All right, hello and welcome to the podcast Eat Better Food Today. I'm your host Ken Coonahan, and I'm excited to be sharing insights on why we believe health and longevity begins with the food we eat. The goal of this podcast will be to inspire, educate, and enable folks to live a healthier life and do it affordably. My wife and I have been on this journey for over 10 years and continue to work on it every single day. A percentage of the profits from this podcast will be put towards child hunger with an initial focus on the poor suburb in America, East Cleveland, Ohio. On this episode, we are grateful to have Trevor Clatterbuck. Trevor is the owner of Fresh Fork Market, Wholesome Valley Farm, Provisions. Did I miss anything, Trevor?
No, I think you got it, yeah.
He's a native of Wheeling, West Virginia, but settled down in Northeast Ohio after attending Case Western University in 2004. In August 2007, I'm sure you've heard this a few times, but he and four fellow students won a $1,000 prize for developing the business plan that eventually grew into Fresh Fork Market. Fresh Fork launched in June of 2008 with about a dozen restaurants as customers and a network of about 15 area farmers and food suppliers. We'll get an update on Trevor's current business in a minute. Trevor and I met several years ago over a cup of coffee. Seems like everything was pre-pandemic these days. So, in this episode, we'll explore Trevor's thoughts on food, health, and longevity, and discuss what continues to inspire him. Welcome, Trevor.
Thank you, Ken.
So I usually start the conversation with what you had for breakfast this morning.
Work on clearing out the fridge. My wife's actually out of town this week, so transitioning to our Cleveland house tonight. So just kind of had some toast and 3 eggs, and actually a little bit of red fife porridge on the side, which is a heirloom grain.
Huh.
Yeah, and I was out of maple syrup, so I just had to have it dry. A little extra butter on it. So.
Never had red fife porridge before.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah.
You sell that at the store?
We do. Yeah, it's unfortunately not very popular. Most people don't make porridge these days, and the ancient grains is honorable of a pursuit as it is. It's a very small market, and it makes it a challenge for us to sell. So it was actually expired product that I took home, and yeah, that's kind of how we survive. Yeah, nothing goes to waste. Yeah,
sounds good. I'll have to introduce that to my wife. So food, and so do you have 2 houses? Is that what I'm gathering here?
I do. It's not as fancy as it sounds. I had been living in Ohio City up to about 2015, and at that point got involved with this property down Holmes County that I eventually bought, this farm where we raise the proteins that we sell at Ohio City Provisions. Mm-hmm. And then sometime it kind of became a slow transition. I want to say fall of 17, early 18, something like that. I started to lose some of, after I transitioned and bought the farm, a couple of the employees that were there had left, and then one thing led to the next, and then it became obvious that it was difficult to manage a farm living 70 miles away and not being on the property. And when nothing breaks during the day when people are there, it's Sunday at noon, or animals are out, this and that, and so there's chores to do first thing in the morning, last thing at night. And so I want to say it's probably 2019. It went from a couple nights a month to in the farm had a home on, so then it turned into an air mattress and living there, and then slowly migrating furniture down there to where I spend 90% of my time now.
So what would we find in the pantry of your house down in Holmes County there?
Well, the pantry is pretty simple. A lot of canned goods that we either put up ourselves or make in our commercial kitchen at the barn there, products that we sell. There's a chest freezer in the basement where there's different proteins and things that come off of my farm. Leftover meals, things like that we'd freeze. Things that are common in my pantry, I always try to keep on hand, just the basics, a couple spices. I'm not big on a huge array of spices. It's just a bunch of clutter that drives me nuts. And then my wife will she'd be laughing at this because I can't stand a lot of things around, so we just keep salt, pepper, and rosemary, thyme, fennel, a little bit of mustard seed, basic things that if I want to pickle something, I've got some spices there. It's generally where I'd use those. Flour, cornmeal. I don't really keep dried fruits or anything like that on hand. And then, like I said, canned items, canned tomatoes, peaches, applesauce, hot sauce. I like a lot of hot sauce, things like that.
So you actually do canning on site there too?
Yeah, so this is something that, again, things have kind of just slowly built up. And I'm actually, I took some training and some classes, University of Tennessee. It was online, so I didn't travel or anything for it, but and became licensed as what's called a process authority. So to do acidified canned goods legally, not cottage industry, but for enterprise where you're going to sell them wholesale, and they consider anything that leaves your property to be wholesale, you have to have a process authority on site, which is somebody who's certified in food safety regarding canning and particularly acidifying foods, and then you register what's called a process letter, which has to come from a process authority, which is a university usually, for every product that you make. So when we make tomato sauce or salsa, we have a separate letter justifying that our process, which is not just the recipe, but what temperature we heat it to, how long we hold it at that temperature, what the final equilibrium pH, all that is for each unit of sale. So an 8-ounce jar has a different process letter than a 16 than a 32, even though it's the same product. But so the long story, or the short answer to this, or long answer to this simple question is, yeah, we have a commercial kitchen on site. It's very small. It's about 2,000 square feet. And throughout the year, there's different products we make. We are a licensed ODA bakery at Wholesome Valley Farm that provides throughout the year everything from crackers and English muffins and breads and cookies, to then our high acid cannery and acidified cannery, where we do everything from jams and jellies to salsa, sloppy joe mix, pretty much anything that we could not waste what the local farmers have and put it up to support our winter model. And then we do ferments and frozen foods there as well.
Oh, nice,
Yeah.
nice.
So, yeah.
Didn't know you did any of that.
Yeah, it's a little bit of everything, and it's not that we do any of it on such a scale that it's its own business model, but the role that Wholesome Valley Farm plays in my my enterprise is that it's the support engine that provides us the baseline for everything we need. So there's opportunity to make crackers, there's opportunity to make all these other products, but it's not enough for somebody to, or it's a significant amount of risk for somebody to start a business to try to do those things, and to use only local inputs. So it's something that I've picked up throughout the years, so that my primary businesses have a baseline of products that they can sell all year long. Because people say, well, you sell local foods, what do you do in the winter? And that's a good question. So like this week at Fresh Fork, in our share, there's very few vegetables available right now. You know, you got potatoes and onions and cabbage that's been in storage, and parsnips and carrots, but you can't do that every week all winter long. So we try to switch it up some, and then we'll do some things that we've added additional value to. So for example, in this week's share, we've got a fermented green tomato relish. So I take the green tomatoes when frost hits, and the only thing left on the vine are the green tomatoes. We cut them in half, we put them in a drum with onions and jalapenos, a 3% salt brine by weight. We ferment it for 60 days, and you get a lacto ferment that's just delicious. Put it through our bowl chopper, give it a real rough chop, and now it's like a relish that you can use on everything from a sandwich to pasta. Put it with your eggs in the morning. That's in this week's share. We make ratatouille in the summertime in our kitchen, so we take all the extra eggplant and zucchini and squash and tomatoes, and we cook them all separately, stew them together, package them in quarts. That's in this week's share. We took chicken wings, which are less than desirable to most of our customers, and so we put them through a brine where we use broth from the excess chicken backs that we have, and we cook the broth, turn that into a brine that's very rich in flavor. We tumble our chicken wings in this brine. We lay them out on perforated racks and season them with a little bit of paprika, sugar, hot pepper flake, etc. Then we smoke them all the way through, and so that's a product that's ready to go, that somebody can finish in the oven or finish in a pan and have chicken wings for dinner in the wintertime. So there's a lot of different products that we make that are really there to support the primary business models and to keep the customers' bellies full throughout the winter.
So how did you get here? I mean, when you started, you were a student at Case, you did won the competition, you started Fresh Fork. I mean, but now you're doing, you just kind of described like you're using everything you make into make something else. I mean, you have no waste, it sounds like.
We have very little waste, that's correct, yeah. And we try to utilize everything. It's a challenge, and there's some days you just shake your head like the mountain never gets smaller, and you're trying to move it, but and then the next summer it starts all over again. Yeah. But to get there, I don't know. I mean, it's just kind of happened one piece at a time. I started like Fresh Fork, like you mentioned, as a student, and at that point, my model was essentially an Amazon marketplace for restaurants to buy from, and that the farmers would list their own product independent and compete on price and availability and consistency and all these things. And the perfect model, and on paper that really sounded like it worked. And what we found was that restaurants had a different buying model, that there were certain things that they valued more than this choice. They really needed consistency to support a menu. And we transitioned to the home consumer model, and at that point, to get more people to subscribe so that we could have the volume we needed to break even, you had to have a wide array of products. And then you couldn't just make all your money in the 6 months of the summertime. You had to be able to spread it out and support your staff. That you can't hire somebody for 5 months a year. You got to give them 12 months of work. What do you do in the wintertime with your staff? So it's things that incrementally I've been trying to solve these problems over the last 10 years, and it's kind of bloomed into this.
Yeah, because I don't know a lot of CSAs are year round. I mean, mostly they're
very seasonal.
Yeah, very seasonal. Yeah.
And so that's where we've always kind of shied away from the term CSA being consumer supported agriculture, for the listeners that aren't familiar with that. And the traditional model, you would subscribe to one farm, and you would take a percentage of the harvest. So if there were 100 members and you were one of those 100, you'd get 1% of the harvest. That's really changed a lot over the years, and most farms don't follow that model anymore. But then when I started Fresh Fork as a consumer model, I started calling it a farm buying club, that we were aggregating from a large number of producers, from produce to meats to cheeses to dairy to eggs, etc., and giving people a bundle that solved the problems that they had with the CSA. And those problems were a lack of variety, that it was not always what they wanted. The bag didn't work well together. And so I've worked on building this package that is themed each week, so that everything going in there, we've planned months in advance, is something that plays well together. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of how the model is built over the years.
Very interesting. So how did you get from, basically the Fresh Fork, and now you've gotten into the farm and you've got provisions? It's kind of an interesting growth model, I guess.
It just kind of, like I said, things just kind of happened.
You're trying to get the variety? Is that,
Well, and I had some supply issues, is really kind of where it started. When I was when it was just Fresh Fork, and I transitioned out of the restaurant model and got into the consumer subscription model. We eventually started adding a a la carte piece where you could go on the website and you could buy whatever you wanted. And I saw that the amount of protein we were selling, meat, was significant, and people were really they're really interested in meat. It was something that wasn't seasonal. You could have meat year round, and they were really looking for a clean, trusted source of meat. And so I was still selling to some restaurants. I had a friend at that point that was a chef, and we'd hang out and we'd talk, and when I'd go do deliveries, then after hours and whatnot, we'd come up with this idea that there was a market for a butcher shop, but just not a normal butcher shop, like really focusing on European seam butchery and charcuterie and homemade lunch meats and everything from scratch with a chef's touch. And so that was where we concepted Ohio City Provisions. So I want to say that we really kind of penciled out that business plan in 2015 or something like that, and started looking for real estate. And at first we thought we wanted to be on West 25th Street, that it was kind of the entertainment district, had a lot of activity and energy, is right next to West Side Market. And what we found real quick is we didn't have enough money to afford rent on 25th Street plus build out a space. And in hindsight, we were pretty ignorant of what it would cost to build a space and what all it took to open up a physical brick and mortar store. And we ended up off the beaten path and ended up down the street, and we were actually quite excited about this location. It was close enough to matter, and it still had parking, all that. So we took out a lease, and then we started kind of working on the details. And I had an issue at Fresh Fork with a supplier that kind of dropped the ball on delivering hogs that fall, and so we put OCP on pause for a little while we figured that out. And it was kind of an eye opener. Said you can't have a butcher shop if you didn't control the supply, especially if your sales pitch is that your supply is different. And I was working with this group of Amish guys down in Wilmot at the property that I currently live on, and they had both been farming independently at home, and I was a customer of theirs both when they were at home. And then they came together with in Amish country, if you're either Amish or you're not, and if you're not, you're called English. And so they came together with an English guy who owned this property that had been transitioning out of using it for an antiques facility. The market was dying out there, but it had this beautiful barn and a good event space and retail opportunity and this a large tract of land that went with it, and they were trying to do produce and a little bit of this and that, and they were very eager to do whatever. So I'd said to them, like, I've got a lot of guys doing produce, doing it very well. We need more eggs. We need more hogs, etc. And it kind of all kept snowballing, and they kept trying and piecing things together. And then when I said, hey, somebody dropped the ball and I need 200 hogs in the spring, they said, well, we need a barn if we're going to farrow that many piglets, and we need fencing, and we need water improvements. And I was like, whoa, this is getting real expensive real quick, and I don't own this farm. So it was a great opportunity to bring the owner to the table, and we worked things out and came up with a purchase agreement and a structure that would allow me to make these improvements before, quickly, I guess would be the right answer, to do these improvements quickly so that we can get to the finish line and keep the customer satisfied. And so it just all happened real quick. Yeah, sorry, that's a very long answer.
That's a lot to happen very quick.
It did. So I'm not kidding you. That fall in 2015, that winter, or I remember that spring, this all started happening. Yeah, it was the end of 2014. I had the supply issue, and then that winter we started hashing this through, and then in March I remember standing at an auction in Seville, Ohio, just off of 71 north of Worcester, and like literally bidding on grain bins that we would have to go tear down and transfer from this farm to my farm, and bidding on equipment, and bought a whole bunch of stuff, and had to figure out how to disassemble a 4-story or 3-story tall grain bin, it's the size of a house, and take it down to the ground and put it on a trailer and move it and re-erect it. And that August, I think, we finished building the grain bins and started digging foundations for barns. And then literally the winter of 15-16 was pouring 300 yards of concrete and literally building barns from the ground up. I remember we had a pregnant sow. The sow is the female, the mama pig. She was in this barn getting ready to farrow, and farrows when they have their piglets. And it's December and it's cold and the piglets need to be warm, and we literally were propping sheets of plywood up and a tent around her effectively to build this temporary hut while we built the barn over top of this sow that was in there getting ready to nurse piglets. Like, it was, like I said, everything all at once. In hindsight, if I was, that's 10 years ago, or not even 10 years ago yet, but I was a lot younger and dumber and ignorant, and I'm not sure I would take that risk today. Like, it was something that it worked out in the end, but it was a scramble, and I think ignorance was bliss.
Yeah, it did work out.
Yeah.
So what do you service today? So customers, businesses, kind of what's your reach, I guess, for the business today?
We found that we weren't very good. It was difficult to do both the wholesale and the retail. So today's focus is almost entirely retail. Our customer base are families in Cleveland that are interested in cleaner, healthier food. At Fresh Fork, we go to them, so to speak, in the sense that we have community pickup locations where the families subscribe to a package, a base package, and then they buy their additional groceries online, and then they pick them up at the back of one of our refrigerated box trucks 4 days a week, 37 weeks a year. And we service customers there. And then at Ohio City Provisions, we're open 7 days a week, 10 to 7, and the customer comes and selects whatever they want out of our meat case and off the shelf, and just buys their groceries.
Nice. So pretty much all Northeast Ohio is kind of the customer base.
Yeah, I'd say within 90% of our customers are in the within the 480 loop, effectively. That we focus on Cleveland, and then we do have a couple outliers as pickup locations for Fresh Fork, Mentor, Copley, Highland Square in Akron, Hudson, and really that's about as far as we go anymore. We used to do something out in Avon. We don't do anything that far west anymore either. A lot of those customers just go to Westlake. Yeah.
So explain, somebody listening to this point, and they're thinking, okay, I've got I'll call it a custom farm, custom butcher, kind of doing the CSA, you got your trucks, sounds expensive, sounds like it's a luxury item from a standpoint of, being able to buy stuff from you. Is that, and I know I've read somewhere where you say we're not a luxury item, so maybe explain a little bit about how customers can buy stuff affordably, I guess.
Yeah, I was actually having this conversation with another local food entrepreneur just last week, honestly, trying to talk about the the industry post-COVID.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of players in this market had just a absolute boom during COVID, and now they're in this bust mode. And we're fortunate that we're not. We've stayed steady. Sales have been up and continue to grow, and we've continued to really focus on servicing the customer as best we can. We understood that right there in 2020 there was excessive demand, and that we need to look at that as an opportunity to literally let the customer shake the hand that feeds them and build some loyalty there. One of the things I was talking with him about is that I think that the demand for local peaked around 2015, and it's received a little bit of greenwashing since then. That all the big corporate players, the large grocery chains, etc., all like to throw around the term local in a very loose sense. And for example, we're talking about the stuff that we make at our farm kitchen. There are plenty of other baked goods, canned goods, etc., made within the 100-mile radius of Cleveland. They're not made with local inputs, though. You can buy berries out, frozen IQF berries out of the West, and make a jam with that, or flour that's just all-purpose generic flour that you don't know where it's from, if it's bromiated, if it's organic or not, if it's been treated, and make a pasta or a baked good out of that. We focus on taking that extra step and making sure that every ingredient in there is the same type of ingredients that you would have at home. So you're not going to find carrageenan in there as a stabilizer. For one, it's if you do a Google search, it's going to give you the first 3 pages are about cancer, which is never a good thing to associate with food. And you're not going to find in there xanthan gum or any type of stabilizers and preservatives that you wouldn't normally have at home. Sorry, I got way off topic. You were asking me about pricing.
Yeah, luxury. That it's not a luxury good.
No.
Yeah.
So anyhow, I was talking to this guy, and one of the things that has challenged marketing local after it had peaked in 2015 is that when somebody says to you local foods, the first thing they associate with in their mind is expensive.
Right.
And I think that the local farmer has how should I say this politely, we have been our own worst enemy, and that the farmers market model and a lot of these other businesses that are marketing local, they're saying because you're local, you need to be more expensive. It's higher, sometimes it's not higher quality. Most of the time it is, but you can have local done poorly, and so I think that we've taken advantage of the customer willing to pay more, and we've secluded local foods to this small corner of the marketplace that is premium priced and targets, affluent, college-educated white people, essentially. And I don't think that needs to be true. And so I've really, really focused to look at my numbers, and I try to cost out everything and get as close as I can. I'm not looking at what the market will bear on price, but what my cost of production plus the necessary margin I need to cover for my labor, for my trucks, for my overhead, for the warehouse, etc. is. And sometimes that product is more expensive than the market bears, and oftentimes in season it's not. And so the number one reason that somebody stops subscribing to Fresh Fork is that it's too much food. They don't tell me, Trevor, it was too expensive. They don't say this, that. They say, oh, I threw away my kale last week, or I couldn't make it through this, or I'm glad the season's over. It was so much work to eat that much. And then I'm like, do I just give them less food and make more money? That's not even fair. And so I think that as a marketer of local foods, we need to think about price as something that the consumer is very aware of. Mm-hmm. And we need to, it's going to take time to shift this perception that local is expensive, and it doesn't need to be.
Need to get that message out there.
Yeah, we've been trying for 10 years, and it's still something we struggle with. Our two different brands, Fresh Fork, I would say is usually perceived as more the value brand because of the bundling. When we put products in this package, it's definitely like we're buying in bulk and splitting it up and sharing the savings. Mm-hmm. When the customer comes into Ohio State Provisions and they want to choose a la carte, they can spend some more money, particularly when you start shopping for proteins. And it always cracks me up. Everyone comes in, oh, I want filet mignon. I'm like, I'm sure you do. We're a whole animal butcher. There's 3.5 pounds of filet mignon or of tenderloin per 350 pound side. So 7 pounds out of 700 on a whole steer. Not everybody gets filet mignon. That's why it's $32 a pound.
But it's $32 a pound most places you go to. I
Yeah,
mean,
actually, it's a lot more than that anymore. I've been to some places where it's 45, 50, and we're $13 a pound under it. Yeah, it's right now the red meat market is the highest it's been in my lifetime. Yeah.
So this kind of contributes to, I guess, the customers that come to you, but we talk about this a lot in the podcast. There's more awareness nationally, locally about the effect of food on health. So when you start talking about when you looked up, I forget what you said you looked up, but it had cancer was kind of the first.
Oh, carrageenan. Yeah, it's a stabilizer.
So, what's your philosophy like food is medicine? I mean, that is a big topic. Food as medicine. Food is medicine. There seems to be a lot more funding, a lot more interest. There's a lot of stuff on the internet, not just talking about carrageenan, but other products that have things in them that are just not good for you.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely the model that we support. Is that Nate, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And nature figured this out, and I have a faith in that we don't need to question that. And I'm not a scientist to sit here and throw around statistics and data about the nutrition of this way and that way, but we've seen certain things that eating a whole balanced diet that's healthy fruits and vegetables that are raised nutrient dense, and eating clean meats that are also raised as nature intended, it's hard to argue that system would be broken. One of the things that we focus on is on beef, for example. Beef is a ruminant animal. Cattle, bovine have 4-chambered stomachs that help them digest cellulose, which is plant-based fibers, and help them break them down and extract all the nutrients they need for life out of that fiber. And that's something that us as humans and turkeys and chickens and hogs can't do. We have very simple stomachs. They go through and they can eat and live entirely off of grass. And when they do, the fats of a grass-fed mammal are much, much higher, and the omega-3 and the conjugated linoleic acids that our body needs. And these are things that we don't find in feedlot corn-finished beef. And so focusing on that at our businesses has been a key cornerstone of our program, that it's not just locally raised beef, it's beef raised on 100% grass on organic pastures. And so it takes longer and it's more nutrient dense, but that is something that we as consumers will feel the benefits of from in our body.
So has that always been a philosophy of the business? I mean, from the time you started Fresh Fork up to now, I mean, kind of permeated throughout.
Yeah, and it's something that we look for in the detail of everything.
So do you, because I shop at Provisions, I've never done your CSA, so do you provide any recipes, any things to encourage people to cook more at home, I guess, from?
Yeah, and the newsletter that comes out at Fresh Fork every Tuesday, we have a newsletter, and it says what the bag contents are for that week. And I'm not as good at it as one of the girls that used to do the newsletter with me, but we put recipes at the bottom. If you go to our website, the former employee I'm talking about, she had put together, there's hundreds. I mean, anytime I'm like, oh, I'm stuck on a recipe for tomatillas, I just go to the website and there's 6 of them with great photos that I can link to. Mm-hmm. And so those are things that are included at the bottom of our newsletter, but also they're always available on our website, and they're ones that are tested and are with original photographs from our staff. It's not like we were just scouring the web and linking to them, but yeah.
Nice. So how about whole foods versus ultra-processed foods? I know you're only doing whole foods based on what you described, but any thoughts on kind of the comparison? Maybe talk about some of the cancerous things or other things, but.
So when you say ultra-processed, I want to make sure you and I have the same definition. Can you explain what you're...
So to me, ultra-processed is if you turn over a package of anything in a grocery store and you can't read the ingredients, you probably shouldn't buy it. To me, that's an ultra-processed food. I mean, it's somebody's put some makeup, some mix, some chemicals, some very long words. It's not a whole food. I mean, if it doesn't, beef should have beef, soy should have soy, wheat should have wheat. There shouldn't be a lot of other, you don't have any fillers, you don't, right?
Exactly.
Binders, all that kind of stuff is just not necessary.
This comes back to what I was saying earlier about if it's an ingredient I don't have in my home kitchen, why should it be on the label?
Right.
On the meat processing side, we see this all the time. I mean, you pick up a package of hot dogs and good luck figuring out what's in there. I mean, you've got sodium ascorbate, which is going to help retain water, and you've got sodium phosphates, which for the same purpose. What the meat industry has figured out, and there's a whole bunch of other things that you can put into meat, and these are things that we've avoided so that effectively the meat industry can sell you water. We were just at a conference last weekend, and they were talking about this, and there was a demonstration with a food scientist from South Dakota that's talking about, these are kind of meat industry terms, but you're pumping and you're brining and you're tumbling and then you're smoking, and it's all about moisture retention and loss. And he was explaining to me about some of the products that he's a consultant that he helps manufacturers in Canada with, and that their type of ham that they were making was pumping at 50% over. And what that means is that they were taking that ham and they put a brine in it, a salt brine that's also got these things like ascorbate and phosphate and stuff like that in there that's going to help retain water. And let's say that ham is 20 pounds before they pump it to 30 pounds, so a 50% gain. And then they tumble it to work the myosin and work that protein to actually hold that water. It's like emulsion, like you're making mayonnaise or something like that, but just inside the piece of meat. And they have to tumble it under refrigeration for 20 minutes and then off. 20 minutes, off. For 24 hours straight to get it to hold all that extra water. Then you put it through a net, you net it, you tie it, you hang in the smokehouse, you cook it on a very specific smoke schedule, and you can retain all 50% extra water. So that's your lunch meat world.
So you're paying for that.
You're paying for that. Turkey breast is even worse. Turkey lunch meat, poultry is so when you think about protein, you've got pork has about the least soluble protein, followed by beef, followed by chicken. And chicken's got a lot, and turkey has even more. And so you could take that lean protein and you can hold more water. So when they make turkey breast, they're pumping it 75 to 100%, doubling its weight in water. Wow. Yeah, and so that's what you're buying, and that's why that turkey breast in the grocery store looks, I mean, it's bigger than any turkey you've ever seen. Mm-hmm. And then oftentimes to make it look like an oven roasted turkey, they're taking that turkey, they put it through what's called a kidney plate, they chop it up, throw it into a emulsion, which would be a 15% emulsion of ground up turkey. They pack that into a specific vacuum bag that is shaped like a turkey breast, and that vacuum bag is lined on the inside with seasonings and a butter alternative and things that make it look like it was roasted in the oven on one side, and then it's cooked in that pouch, essentially sous vide, in a smokehouse, so that when it comes out, it retains its moisture and it looks like oven roasted turkey with this synthetic roast on the surface. That's your ultra processed food. The other one that always gets me all fired up, and if you ever come in Provisions on Monday and Tuesday and Thursday, there's a food legend that works for us, Parker Bosley, and he is just absolutely passionate about food and good farming, and he's a model of how this lifestyle can give you good health. I mean, I don't want to expose his age, but he's in the mid-80s, and he comes in and works 12-hour shifts on his feet. And it's absolutely inspirational. And one of the things that Parker gets all fired up is about these ultra-pasteurized milk and things like that. And when somebody hears the term ultra is associated with being better or extra, or it's good, it's the premium. No, what they've done is they've changed atmospheric pressure on that milk so they can pasteurize it at such a high temperature that it not only kills the harmful bacteria that people are afraid of in raw milk, but also the bacteria that are good for your digestive tract. There's one that it's got a scientific name, it goes by the initials XO. Don't even ask me to even try to pronounce it, that helps with the digestion of lactose. And we don't have enough of that in our bodies, and it's in the milk, and then we cook it out in this ultra-processed, ultra-pasteurized milk product for two reasons. Well, the number one reason is profitability. And so what they found is that when you can do ultra-pasteurized milk at this high temperature, it's now effectively shelf stable. It's got a 60-day life on. We put it, I've been told, I'm not experimenting with this, that it's shelf stable and you can sit it on the shelf without refrigeration. In the grocery store, though, what they found is that Americans want to see milk in the refrigerator, so they take this shelf stable product and put it in the refrigerator. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So there's the ultra processed world, yes.
So I was going to ask you about Parker Bosley. He seems to have been the father of a lot of chefs in Cleveland that serve good food here. So how was he involved in your business? I guess any stories to share about Parker and other than standing on his feet for 12 hours? But.
Yeah, I remember the first time I called up Parker when I was a student. As you mentioned, there was a professor that said, "Hey, you got to talk to this gentleman. He was kind of the pioneer in local foods." And I remember calling him on the phone, and he was very skeptical at first. I'm not sure about this. There's farmers markets, people go out and do this, this, and that. And the one thing that to this day, Parker and I always remind ourselves about is that we are not the same as 95% of our customers. And so I've learned to take a step back and put myself in the shoes of that customer that's got the family, the kids going to activities, this a very busy lifestyle. And then Parker must have changed his tune a little bit, or was curious and called me back and invited myself and my business partners at that time over for dinner. And I still remember that first dinner at Parker's house when he came out with the most simple dish that I remember to this day. It was literally green cabbage that he had sauteed with olive oil and garlic, a little bit of salt, and just so simple but prepared perfectly. And it brought out the sweetness of the cabbage, and the garlic was just so balanced with the earthiness and the kind of sharp notes to it, and it was delicious. And from this day forward, I mean, it's I'd consider Parker not only a mentor but a good friend, and I mean, he even married my wife and I and officiated the service.
Oh,
wow.
Wow.
Yeah, we're very fortunate to have met Parker and continue a good relationship with him.
Nice. Yeah, I went to a restaurant over the weekend that it was not inexpensive, and they got a piece of halibut, which was absolutely delicious, but everything underneath it, there was just too many ingredients. And they didn't. I wish it was simple, like you were just describing with cabbage. But.
Yeah, and that is the best way to describe Parker's styles. Keep it simple, highlight the ingredients, the quality of the work the farmers did. It's inspiring.
Yeah, very cool. Have you had any from a customer standpoint? Anybody come in with any stories about I started doing your CSA or provisions or whatever, and I feel better, or I'm healthier, or any like positive feedback that way? Or
oh, absolutely. We hear from folks all the time that they feel better. That the number one thing that motivates somebody to also be a customer is when they have children and now they're thinking about the health of their growing kids. And then we'll have people come in and say, I would have never thought of buying kohlrabi. I love it now. Or, you forced me to try this and that. Or by having these ingredients in the refrigerator, I had to use them. And it made me eat healthier. So it's kind of like that gym membership, but for for food. Yeah.
Well, the gym is you kind of need both exercise and good food. But yeah. You get plenty of that without going to the gym, I think.
But it's physical what we do for a living. Yeah.
So I just want to point out, so when you kind of came up through all that, I mean, you had no farm experience. I mean, this was everything you're doing is basically new to you, right? Yeah. You didn't have a family that grew up in this business and canning or farming or grain or any of this.
No, I'd say growing up, we ate a very traditional American diet. I mean, I remember sitting around with my dad on Fridays. He worked shift work, and we'd watch the Price is Right or whatever that is called, or
Price is Right,
and he'd open this packet up and put in water, and it was Mrs. Grass's. He called it garbage soup, but whatever. It was some highly processed packet that you'd freeze dry. You'd rip it open, boil it with water, serve it over noodles, and that was very typical type of food. Blue box mac and cheese, stuff like that, and it's something that I've had to learn to cook. I've learned to farm. I've learned to cut meat. It's something I'm passionate about. And it's easy to learn when you're passionate about it.
So what's next?
I wish I could answer that. I've got at this point I feel like we're really hitting a stride and getting efficient in what we do, and my focus now is to try to get the businesses to a point that they're rolling with a little bit less input, and that that the staff, that we kind of design a model that works so that we can hire people going into the future that enjoy this type of lifestyle, because it is a lot of work that we do, and we need to set it up so that we can work smarter and not harder.
Nice. Yeah. So what would you say your proudest accomplishment is over the last 10, 15 plus years?
Boy, I mean, that one's so hard to answer. I'm the type of person who won't tell you my favorite color, because it depends what you're using it on, so it's we've done a lot of things, and business-wise, proudest accomplishment. I think just the being able to get provisions started and off the ground and running, and same with the farm. I mean, these are things that 90% of businesses fail in the first year or two, and that I was able to get 2 of them up and going, and they continue to provide positive cash flow. That's a win. I mean, the simplest form.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Do you stay in touch with Case? Do you do anything with Case? I'm just curious based on kind of where you started, or.
I don't really. I don't do much. I don't do anything alumni network or anything like that. I've kind of. I really haven't even talked to anyone I went to school with in years, and it's. I'm in a very different world, like physically and living 70 miles away, but also the type of work I'm doing is I'm pretty sure I'm the only one around there with a college degree right now, and it's humbling too when you're proven wrong over and over, or that's things like that. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, because they do a lot with entrepreneurship at Case. That's why I was curious.
Yeah, no, I haven't really gotten involved. No.
Okay. So, any final thoughts you want to leave listeners about yourself or the business?
Open-ended questions. How much time do you have? No, I mean, I think the biggest thing is and I'm not asking everyone on here to go find Fresh Pork or Ohio State Provisions and be customers. I think that if anyone on here wants to get in control of their health and diet, just start to know where your food comes from. Find your sources, grow it yourself. I mean, plant a garden. It's not easy. Cook from scratch. I think and you don't have to do. The time when somebody struggles is when they try to go cold turkey and go 100%. If it's make 2 things a week from scratch at home, or cut out eating out. It's something that my wife and I rarely eat out, and most times when I do, I'm disappointed when I get the check, and I'm like, well, there's 2 weeks of Fresh Pork for lunch, and so it's something where I think that you'll find surprisingly that you enjoy the time. This is how we are. We enjoy the time in the kitchen. It takes less time often than eating out. It's cheaper. It's healthier. I know what I'm eating, and it's engaging as a family. So I think that's something important. Just find your sources and try to own your health.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I couldn't agree more. Any thoughts on longevity in that vein? I guess that's kind of the final question I have. Just kind of, eating healthier, exercising, living a longer life. I mean, it just seems
like common sense.
Yeah, it seems like common sense. Yeah. I mean, if you look at the blue zone areas, they seem to have a lot of physical activity. They eat well. They don't have a lot of ingredients, and they live long lives. So.
And it's something too that I think we're gonna be talking about this for years, because there's so many variables in life, environment and genetics and all that. It's hard to pinpoint one thing, but I think that if we can control one thing and diet, and then the other items are out of control, I think we're at least one step in the right direction.
Yeah, current research is kind of saying only 10 to 30% of your makeup is based on kind of genetic DNA, things you can't control. So that means 90 to 90% is controllable by you as far as what you do with your life, food, health, everything. So
I think that's the way to end it, that control that 90%.
Yeah, exactly. So did you bring a recipe today? Did you have
it's funny, I don't ever really, most people want recipes that are like specific weights and times and temperatures, and one of the things I learned from Parker is just to cook. And it's a sense of using your senses and adjusting as you go. So no, I don't have a specific recipe that's something that anyone would publish.
So what would be your favorite dish then? Because I'll make something. I've had several guests that have not had a specific recipe. I can put the ingredients, the measurements together.
So you were asking earlier about what I was eating this morning. I was talking about cleaning out the fridge, and one of the favorite dishes that my wife and I make is just homemade pizza night. Once a week we do that, and no 2 pizzas are ever the same, and it's a chance to use all those random bits in the fridge and get really creative. And last weekend when we did Pizza Week, I had just gone pheasant hunting, and I had a whole bunch of pheasants, and it was one of those things, if you put it in the freezer is where food goes to die slowly. And so I carved them down, and I put the leg quarters into a cure, like I was doing a duck confit. I did the same thing with the pheasants. I cooked them in actually some leftover duck fat I had from doing confit about a month ago, and took the breast and used those in a stew. And so anyhow, we had all this duck or pheasant confit meat, and it's like, what to do with it? Well, I had some frozen corn in the freezer. I had some leftover greens that I sweated down, some spinach and kale. What else did we put on that pizza? Anyhow, it was amazing, and it was just a little bit of random stuff. And who puts pheasant on their pizza?
Yeah,
you know. So
I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, but it was delicious, and actually we ended up doing that with, we had some winter squash we had roasted and made that as the base for kind of like a creamy butternut squash sauce with the corn, the pheasant, the greens, a little bit of cheese, a little bit of balsamic on top, some sea salt, and it was good.
Did you make the crust too?
Yeah, my wife does the crust, and
Okay.
she's much more patient and has finesse for that. Baked goods are not. I'm too like Fast and Furious for baked goods. I just tear them up. So she's really good at that. Rolls it out, and it's kind of the thing we do together, and we enjoy making pizza night together, and that's our favorite meal.
Nice. Well, thank you for being on the show. Where can people find you on social media if they wanted to look you up?
I actually don't use social media, so.
What, you guys have a website?
We do, yes, yeah. So I personally am not on there, but Ohio City Provisions has a Instagram page at Ohio City Provisions, and my partner Adam posts there regularly and has some wonderful insight to how we produce everything, about the pictures of the products, new items, fun stuff, community stuff. And then my wife manages the Fresh Fork page, and that's both on Facebook and Instagram. It's something, again, we're not every day out there posting stuff, but there's a history out there of interactions with our customers. You scroll through, and that's at Fresh Fork Market. And then we, of course, have a website for both businesses. The Fresh Fork Market one has a lot more recipes and content on it. It's something we update regularly. Yeah, that's kind of the summary of it.
All right.
Nothing on X or Twitter or any of that, or yeah.
That's okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for being here today.
Well, I appreciate it.
Very much appreciated. I'm going to do a little commercial for somebody here. So the first sponsor that I have for the show is Zimmer Real Estate Group, part of Keller Williams. You might ask why I have a realtor on a health and longevity show. Well, Bob Zimmer, who's agreed to take a percentage of his commissions and put them towards a new center in East Cleveland that we're trying to build in that area. So I'll post a link to the realtor on the website that we have. He has local and global reach, and I much appreciate the fact that he was willing to sponsor the show today. So please follow and subscribe to the show every week wherever you listen to podcasts. Please leave comments below or on the website Eat Better Food Today, and so we can continue to provide content for healthier, longer lives. Gratefully yours, Ken. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken.